just following up on what Sean was asking on the famine.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying you don't see that famine is imminent in Gaza.
That is literally not what I said, Saeed.
Okay.
I think in the very first thing I said in response to Sean's question is
I
that
just want to understand it. Maybe I couldn't hear it.
the question was from the. You can actually just read the transcript if you want to see what Sean's specific question was. But let me just echo again: we are deeply concerned about the report that indicate that famine is imminent in Gaza.
Right. Thank you. Because there was actually a report by Samantha Power saying that it is imminent. So
I think it was
glad you
press release.
clarified that. I have a couple of other questions. The Wall Street Journal reported that Israel is going to expropriate or steal, as they called it, 16% of Gaza for a buffer zone. Is that something that you're aware of, or is that something that would be acceptable to the administration, considering that the administration said time and again that Gaza should not be reduced in size?
That's absolutely right. You have heard me and the Secretary and Matt be very clear that there must be no reduction in territory of Gaza, that Israel needs to comply with international law and any measures it takes to defend itself, and it needs to take every feasible step to protect civilian harm. We certainly appreciate Israel's need for security, especially since October 7th, but again, let me just be very clear that there can be no reduction in territory of Gaza.
So the administration would never agree to the concept of a buffer zone.
That is not something that is the kind of thing that would run contrary to one of the key principles that Secretary Blinken laid out in Tokyo last fall.
All right. There was also an article in the Washington Post that said that the president and the administration knew very well, early on, in a meeting on the 27th of October, that Israel was purposely targeting Palestinian civilians. Are you aware of that report? Have you seen it?
I'm just not going to comment on any hearsay side. We have been very clear with our Israeli partners that they need to do more to improve its deconfliction mechanisms, that more must be done to minimize civilian casualties, and more needs to be done to protect the well-being of Palestinian civilians. And that's something that we'll continue to echo and raise with them at every opportunity.
So you think that the administration was surprised by the amount of civilian casualties, was unaware that the Israelis were targeting purposely?
I'm not going to engage in reporting that is hearsay and rooted in internal deliberative assessments.
And lastly, now you said that you want to make sure, or the administration wants to make sure, that October 7th could never be repeated again, because it's it falls under Israel's right to defend itself and all that stuff. Now, we know that it's been reported in the last couple of days that the Israelis have distributed something like 100,000 pieces of small arms to around settlers, to basically defend themselves. My question to you, do Palestinians have the right to defend themselves? And in what form should the Palestinians defend themselves?
Are you talking about in what context are you speaking about, Saeed?
I'm saying that the Palestinians are being assaulted time and time and time again. I mean, Israel attacked Gaza, unlike what many people like to think, that the whole issue began on October 7th. Israel has struck Gaza time and time again for decades before that, right?
Let me just say two things, Said. When we talk about Israel having the right to defend itself and Israel having the right to security, what we're talking about is defending itself from terrorist groups like Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, who have a track record of carrying out terrorist attacks on the people of Israel as recently as, I'd point you no further than October 7th. When it comes to the expansions of settlements and activities from settlers, which we find insightful, dangerous, reckless, we have not parsed our words. I recall just a number of weeks ago in which the Secretary spoke quite clearly about our viewpoint that we find the expansion of settlements to be inconsistent with international law. We believe that these kinds of activities run contrary to Israel's security, and they run contrary to what we hope is a shared goal of a two-state solution where Israelis and Palestinians can have equal measures of justice and peace and security, and that's what we're going to continue.
What about the military raid night after night? That go in with half tracks and sometimes helicopters, Apache helicopters, and so on, and even with drones and armed assaults and so on. Do they have the right to defend themselves against such military assaults?
Said, what we're talking about is you're using examples of our partners in Israel conducting legitimate security operations that are in the interest of their self-defense and the interest of security. All right, anything else on Gaza? Go ahead. I promise I will get to you, Jillian. Go ahead.
Thank you, Vedant. There was a Washington Post investigation published today about the killing of our freelancers, Al Jazeera freelancers in Gaza, Mustafa and Hamza, and they, Washington Post also sought the help of experts in this investigation, and they found out that the reasons the Israelis give for this, it happens on January 7th, is not consistent with evidence that they found. I don't know if you saw this report, but it shows, according to Washington Post, that there was no Israeli military presence around them, both of them. They were alone. They were conducting a story for us, and they were targeted and killed both in January 7. And I remember, I was in Tel Aviv at that time, but I remember Matt was asked here in this room about if they reached to the Israeli partners for clarification, and he said that you did. And I'm asking you here, did you hear back from them?
I don't have any updates for you. First, let me just say, though, you heard me talk a little bit about this yesterday. We believe that journalists and the right to free speech needs to be protected, and especially in the situation, in the context of what's happening in Gaza, journalism is more important than ever. I will also say that we've been crystal clear that Israel needs to treat all detainees humanely and with dignity and in full accordance with international law.